Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Anna Weber. I'm the chair of the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee for the Society for Conservation Biology in North America. So today we're holding a panel discussion to kind of talk about and answer questions about studying internationally in the US in the present moment. So hopefully we can provide all of you with some resources to help navigate this really dynamic situation for yourselves. Um, or for international students that you might know or work with professionally. And before we get into that, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what our organization is all about for anyone who may be unaware. So this webinar is being hosted, as I mentioned, by the Society for Conservation Biology North America, which is a regional group of the Global Society for Conservation Biology. We're a professional society that's dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving Earth's biological diversity. Um, our vision is a world with thriving biodiversity, ecosystems, and human connections. And our mission is to provide an environment that welcomes, supports, and empowers diverse students and professionals to contribute, advance, and apply conservation science. So to summarize that, we're a really broad organization with members from all kinds of backgrounds and from all career paths within the field of conservation. So it includes biologists, but also social scientists, conservation managers, government agency employees, really anything that's related to conservation. For our members, we host networking and professional development events like this one, and we hold conferences in North America every 2 years, which the next one being next year in Milwaukee. And then the Global Society also produces 3 publications that members can subscribe to keep up to date on research and news in conservation. So if you are interested in learning more about our society or you think you might be interested in joining, just have a QR code here that you're welcome to scan. Just goes to our website, and any QR codes or contact information that I put on the PowerPoint, I'll also put in the chat later, so no rush. Um, so this webinar series has been organized by the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee. Our role is to promote and support those values both within our society and within the broader field of conservation as a whole. So we host virtual webinars like this one. We develop other online resources, and we also host social events at our in-person conferences. I took on this chair position just earlier this summer. My predecessor also developed an allyship program, which includes a video series and also a classroom curriculum that will be available for use. We have a really great group of people who work on these projects with me. And if you're interested in also hoping to develop some of these projects, feel free to just send me an email. We can add you to the email list for the group. Now, oops, what's going on here? Well, there was a QR code there, but I guess it's gone away. um, I'll just briefly mention a couple of the projects that we're working on more specifically before I introduce our panelists. So there was actually a question that was pre-submitted to the webinar today about whether SCBNA offers any resources for international students, and that I'm actually going to answer right now. We have been working since the beginning of this year to crowdsource a list of various resources. Let me see. There's various resources to help out both our members and anyone who needs it. One of these is a list of EIDJ and legal resources, which the QR code that was on this slide would take you to. But again, I'll just put that link in the chat later. So this list includes a lot of articles and webinars where you can, or websites where you can go to learn about diversity issues, how to navigate current federal policies, for instance, like in scientific grant writing, where there's limitations on the language that you can use these days, job boards and resources for job seekers, guidance for how to communicate with the public and the media, how to contact your congresspeople, et cetera. And then there's also a few legal resources on there that are related to immigration and DEI issues, as well as environmental policy and conservation law. This list of resources is very much still in development. So if you check out the list when I put it in the chat, and you see that we're missing something, please feel free. There should be a link on that web page on the right-hand side where you can send us more resources to add to our list. So those are available through our website. The other project that's actually been being developed through the Student Affairs Committee is another crowdsourcing list of opportunities for students that are not dependent on US federal funding. So given uncertainties among funding for science and academia in the US right now, a lot of the early career folks are finding themselves with less funding for their projects and fewer employment opportunities. So we thought it would be helpful to crowdsource a list of opportunities that are not reliant on this funding, including scholarships, assistantships, fellowships for grads and postdocs, research opportunities for undergrads, internships, grant opportunities. The goal of this is to have a list of openings that we can be fairly confident are relatively secure. Maybe they're funded through a state or a nonprofit or a private foundation. Anyone can add an opportunity to our list using the QR code. There on the bottom of the slide, and then you can view the list, or other way around. Add a listing on the top of the slide. You can view the list and the lower QR code. And then again, it will also be in the chat. There isn't a whole lot on this list yet, but the more things that get added to it, the better it will get. So if you come across something that fits the bill for this, please, I encourage you to add it to our list. And at this point, I am excited to introduce you all to our 4 panelists. They're going to be talking to us about the status of international students in the US, and then I'll let them take it away and kind of introduce themselves in a little bit more detail. So first we have Joanne Ung Hartman. She's a Senior Impact Officer at NAFSA. Claire Overman, who is the CEO of the Association for International Education Administrators. Malathi Benjamin, who's an immigration attorney from Pasadena, California. And Christy Thomas, who is the Director of the Office of International Students and Scholars at the University of New Orleans. So each of them are just going to give little introductions, and then we'll start off with questions that were pre-submitted through our Google form online. And then with the remaining time that's left, we will switch to live audience questions. So with that, I will turn it over to our panelists. Joanne, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna and Bernie, for having NAFSA here to talk about international students, international education, which we know is one of the important things that we all do here and cherish and want to make sure we have a good future ahead of us, right? We want to talk about the good parts and also the not so good parts, I suppose, today. So I represent NAFSA Association of International Educators, which is a nonprofit membership association. We have over 10,000 members globally from over 150 different countries. Our membership is made up of people like Christy, for example, who work at universities to support international students and scholars. There are providers, just the whole ecosystem within international education. A large part of our work is liaising with government agencies directly and working with coalitions to really ensure that our rules, regulations, policies, processes are smooth for international students and scholars. We believe very strongly in international education, that it advances, our future and our world in socially, economically, environmentally, just in all ways that international students and scholars contribute to a more just and peaceful world. So I will start off, I think, with Anna, do you want me to go into some of the little 5-minute presentations, or do we want to do introductions right now first?
I think we can go ahead and have each person just give their few minutes of spiel.
A few minutes.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So I think many of you probably are aware already from news articles and your schools and probably international offices on your campuses that there's been a lot to do with higher education in general, as well as international education. Lots of different policies, new executive orders and guidance that have been issued since February, I will say. It's been nonstop with lots and lots of things that impact international students and scholars, but also other areas within higher education, such as the rescission of the interview waiver policies, for example. CVIS record terminations and visa revocations in April. Who can forget that piece, right? Because it was all over the news everywhere. I'm sure people in the community were like, what does this mean, right? Because it highlighted the importance of international students in our local communities, a lot of that. Visa appointment pause, the social media vetting, the travel bans. I can go on and on and on because there was continues to be so much coming. Um, we see an administration that has an enforcement mindset. So a lot of these have consequences, obviously, and create the fear and uncertainty, I think, for a lot of international students and scholars. But the nice part, the good part, people like Christy, who are on your campuses, on the ground, they are there to support you. Your faculty members are there to support you. So the focus we want to have is really about having you refer to your International Student Scholar Services Office, you looking to them for support because there's a lot of support services. We have spoken to many institutions and universities that have, over the summer, over the course of the last few months, really come together as a community to support international students. So very important. And yesterday, in case you've not seen it, the Pew Research, they did a survey and research that 79% in general of Americans think it's good for the US to have international students. So that gives us hope. And I'll stop right there before we go into other discussions. I'll turn it over back to Anna.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to go in a circle around who's appearing on my screen. Malati, do you want to go next?
Does you want to hear me? Okay, so I'm Malati Benjamin. I'm an immigration attorney here in Pasadena, California. I came out of actually a primarily business corporate background because A, it was crashingly boring, and I'm so much more people related, and immigration to me, really spoke to me. I have a diverse international background because I was born in India, lived in Sri Lanka, grew up in England, spent 13 years in the Middle East, Dubai, and then I came here. So I've been here now the longest. The US is absolutely my home for the last 30 years, but I have walked the immigration path myself, right? And even though, it's always been legal, etc., it has been still stressful. Driver's licenses. I'm sure many of you students are aware that even something as, seemingly mundane as a driver's license is impacted by your immigration status, right? Legal or not legal, they want specific documents. So I get it. I really understand the tensions that students feel, or any, honestly, would-be immigrant, and more so in this climate. Joanne has actually said a lot of what I would also have said, because we're all in the same environment. The thing is, there's an overabundance of news items, right? So I'm not saying switch off, because you absolutely should not switch off, but you need to be mindful of the sources that you get your information from, right? And not just your local newspaper or the media or social media. They can point you towards something, but always verify sources. Go to NAFSA for sure. For students, I would say even honestly, well-known universities, they maintain a good sort of resources of information. American Immigration Lawyers Association, for their public announcements, etc. So always be aware of changes, and also be aware of where you're getting your information from. So I think that's it for me.
All right, thank you for that. We can turn it over to Christy.
Hi, my name's Christy Thomas from the University of New Orleans. I'm the Director of International Students and Scholars Office here at UNO. I'm sort of representing a lot of my other colleagues that are campus-based as well. And the things that Joanne and Malathi have mentioned, we all really work together to assist the students and scholars that come to our campuses. We're really a very strong and interconnected community. We need the resources that organizations like NAFSA offer, and the specialized legal expertise that immigration attorneys like Malathi offer as well. So, sort of as a representative individual, I want to say that your campuses are really good places for you to get your information and to be the source of expertise for you as you make your journey as a student, if that's what you're interested in doing. At UNO, we offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. And if you're interested in an academic institution, you might be interested in a school like us, but you might also be interested in a different kind of a school, maybe an associate's degree school. Maybe you want to come to the US to learn more about English or to perfect your English or improve your academic English so that it helps you as you go through your academic journey and make sure that you're communicating in the strongest, most effective way. But our jobs at campuses are to help you to succeed in the environment on the campus, to help welcome you, to help give you all the information that you need in terms of how do you get accepted or admitted to the institution, and then get your visa and then come to campus and be successful here. So we're an excellent source of further information and resources for you, both as it relates to your immigration situation and as it relates to how you can go farther in your academic pursuits. I just wanted to mention that really that's what we're here for, is a source of information and support as you go through your journey. And I hope that you'll count on your schools, count on the individuals at your schools to help you to be successful and move forward. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you. And Claire, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So thanks everybody for having us, and it's so nice to be here. I'm Claire Overman, CEO of AIEA, the Association of International Education Administrators. So we like Joanne at NAFSA, we consider ourselves like a little sister of NAFSA. We are a small subset of people who are kind of in the leadership and decision-making roles at mostly higher education institutions, but really across the international higher education landscape, as Joanne referred to as well. So these are people like Vice Provost for International Affairs or a Vice President for Global, people who oversee a lot of the strategy and kind of overall institution-wide thinking about how international education and global engagement, how that is, belongs at an institution, and how it is changing our whole higher education landscape. We are tracking all of these things as well, and also kind of just thinking about them in this holistic sense of trying to piece together all of the different challenges that I'm sure everybody is facing and is witnessing, things related to research funding, obviously visa issues and CVIS, direct immigration issues, of course, really just broader attacks on higher education writ large, and this kind of anti-globalist, anti-globalism mentality and related policies that are coming out right now, including anti-DEI efforts, all of which we are really frustrated and dismayed to see. But what I feel I've been observing, which is actually really heartening, is that there is a doubling down on our commitment to international education and to the value of having international students here in the United States. So, I mean, if it's not clear from what has been said already, which everybody is welcome here, and we do benefit so greatly from the knowledge exchange, the expertise, the innovation, the cultural exchange that international students bring to the US. And myself, having been somebody who's gone abroad and lived and tried to mingle and take part in another culture, who came from another country to come here as a young girl, also really do understand some of the challenges that come with intercultural living. But that challenge is actually the good stuff. And so aside from all of the regulatory and policy things that we're facing, what you are all engaging in right now is so critical to you as individuals and your professional growth, but also to all of the people around you who you are helping to benefit every single day being on campus. I'd also just point out that, especially kind of from my perspective, kind of in this professional association of the international education leadership, I am so heartened to see that there is all of this infrastructure around that is there to support international students. Everyone from the president of a university all the way to a student worker who is helping to hold office hours to answer questions. There's an entire institutional infrastructure that is built to support international students and who are dedicated to your well-being. And that goes for externally too. There are so many other support structures that are doing all of this amazing advocacy in Washington, for instance, like NAFSA and others. There are wonderful things happening at other types of organizations and at these institutions too. And it's been really good to see everybody just coming together, trying to work more across institutions, across offices, to really try to combat a lot of this anti-globalist rhetoric, policy, regulation that we're seeing. And it's an uphill battle for sure. But I think we have made progress thanks to organizations like NAFSA and others. And so I look forward to this discussion about other kind of forward-thinking ways that we can work together.
All right, thank you so much, all of you. It's really nice to hear so much enthusiasm and positivity about international education. We can move on to the 5 questions that were pre-submitted via a Google form, and then we can take whatever questions the audience has. So the first 3 that I have are actually just sort of technical questions about visas. So I think we'll probably start with those. And I'm just going to have this be a free-for-all. Whoever wants to answer the question, go for it. So first of all, what requirements are needed to go as visitors to universities or research institutions?
I can start off with that. I'm going to say it's going to depend on what it is that you mean by a visitor. Are you coming as a prospective student to check out the campus, to take a look around? Are you coming as someone who wants to do some kind of research or participate in a more formal kind of activity? So if you're coming as a prospective student, it would depend on whether you're from a visa waiver country or whether you need a visa, like a tourist visa, to come to the United States. Coming to check out an institution, it used to be that you would get a prospective student notation on a visitor's visa, but I think you could just come on a visitor's visa or as a visa waiver with the ESTA process if you're coming just to look at institutions. If you have plans to do some kind of more formal activity like research or participate in a more formal event or to become a student, then you might need a more specific kind of a visa. So if that person is in the audience and wants to follow up with some additional information, I could try and give you a more targeted answer, or if anyone else has something to add on.
Yeah, Christy is correct. It really does depend on the purpose and where you're coming from, obviously. So if you're international, you will need a visa to enter the country anyway. If you're planning to go to school, you needed the F1 visa, and you need all the eligibility certification, the I-20s, etc., which you would already have got from the school. It's more tricky when you are applying for a tourist visa, and you can have a tourist visa, which is for pleasure, the B2, or the tourist visa, which is for business, which is the B1. So the B2 is literally only for pleasure. You go to Disneyland, you go visit the Statue of Liberty, you come for somebody's wedding, etc., etc. It doesn't permit you to go to school at all, okay, study even just sort of without actually going through a program. Obviously, it doesn't allow you to work. The B1 is a little bit more business related. My preference, if you're coming to check out schools, is so when you get the visa stamp in your passport, it will always be B1, B2. If you're going to get it, it's going to be that hybrid. But at the port of entry, when they ask you, why are you here? My preference, with a caveat, which I'll explain, is to tell them, I'm here to check out schools, not going to enroll in the school, just going to see what it's all about and go back, right? But then you need to do that. Now, the caveat is they may say, sorry, you're going to come check out a school and probably file to change status, because that is an option. And so you do run the risk of actually maybe being turned away at the border. But that is the most accurate and truthful indication of what you're going to do. If you say, oh, I'm coming to, visit friends, etc., etc., and that could also be part of what you're doing, but it could hurt you later on, because then when you're applying for the F1, and if it comes to their knowledge that, oh, you said you were entering, but then you actually enrolled you didn't enroll, but you started the search process, did you misrepresent at the border, And I think under this present climate, they're looking to find fault. So I tell clients it's never volunteer information that's not asked for. If they just say have a good day and carry on, that's fine. But if they ask you purpose, it's better to be truthful, even at the risk of being turned away, than to be caught later on or at that time in a misrepresentation. So, but that is a judgment call, obviously, of the individual who's applying.
Can I just add, Malathi and Christy, you've made such valid points, right? And Christy, very important when you don't just pop into an institution, or if you want to do research, you're obviously going to be in touch with the institution, probably with your academic faculty members, and please ensure that they are in touch with the international student and scholar offices, people like Christy who are there to support and help advise properly. And Malathi, your point about, your immigration record follows you, right? When I used to be on a campus, when I advised my students and scholars, it was always about your need may be the now, but you're planning for the 5 or 10 years from now, right? It's not just the now of the moment. You may be thinking about that, but your advisor is there. People like, again, the PDSO, DSO, the school officials who know the immigration regulations as it pertains to, international students and scholars. And that's so important to keep in mind.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. So the next question is pretty closely related to that one, but this is a student or a tourist visa required if you're carrying out short-term activities, for example, less than 6 months, with a researcher without U.S. funding?
And I'll start with that also. If you're coming to do research on a campus, then we suggest that the campus sponsor you for a J visa, usually, probably as a short-term scholar, as long as the person qualifies for that type of designation. If you're coming on a tourist visa to do research, you're allowed on the business B visa to undertake independent research. So the difference between coming to a campus with campus sponsorship might be that you come to the campus, you have a space to set up your laptop, you might get a university email account or have access to their internet and their intranet, and you'd be able to do research in their library. If you're being sponsored in a specific department, maybe you're under doing something collaboratively with that academic department or a specific faculty member, perhaps access to their laboratory facilities and other facilities on the campus. Whereas if you were to come on the business visa and undertake independent research, you wouldn't have that kind of access at the campus. You might be using their library, coming independently and asking to use a library, maybe traveling around the United States to go to different facilities, but not have the same kind of participation within the campus. So for me, the answer is to come either on the business visa or perhaps ESTA, or come as a J short-term scholar usually. Anybody want to add to that?
I do. The J is definitely, a good option if you're really going to be entrenched in, research activities. The danger of the J, and it probably doesn't apply for short-term scholars, but there is a 2-year home residency requirement. So again, looking forward, into the future, if you're filing to change status to an H-1B or even to a green card, there is a question of, have you ever been in J status? And you will need a determination from the Department of State, not the DS 2019, that says, oh, you're not subject, because that's not binding. So the Department of State can give an advisory opinion saying, no, you are not subject. So that it's okay to come on the J visa, but then as soon as you leave, get that advisory opinion that saying that J program does not subject you to that 2-year requirement. Because if you are subject, you can't change to H-1B status until you've served 2 years back home. You can't get a green card through a spouse or anything like that until you've satisfied that requirement. And sometimes when you're applying for those and now you have to get that advisory opinion, you may not get it in enough time. So, just bear that in mind when choosing the J. Also activities, if there's any exchange of remuneration of any kind, free housing, et cetera, for, whatever you're doing in terms of activity, immigration looks at unauthorized employment very broadly. It doesn't actually have to be a paycheck. You don't have to have a 1099 or a W-2. Any exchange of benefits for services rendered, they could look at as unauthorized employment. So you have to be very, very careful of that. Bearing in mind also, again, under the present administration, other agencies, independent of the Department of Homeland Security, are sharing information. And the IRS has made it clear that they never did it in the past, but they are sharing tax information to the Department of Homeland Security. So they will have access to your tax records, your bank accounts. And again, this is probably more for the future, but just bear that in mind.
Okay, great. So the next question, in your experience, how far in advance should people be applying for student visas before their stay in the US?
That's another question that it's going to depend on a number of things. First of all, it's going to depend on where you are in the world and how backlogged your embassy or consulate is going to be in terms of their appointments. And also, it's important to check the US visa reciprocity. Recently, a large group of countries had their reciprocity shortened. So you have to check the reciprocity to make sure that you're not applying too early. So, for example, if you're coming to school in the United States and you're going to start in the fall, and because your country has a backlog of visa appointments and your turn comes up in February, if you go in February and are issued a visa that only lasts for 3 months, then it's going to expire before your school starts in the fall. So you have to do a little bit of planning. So you can Google or do a search for US visa reciprocity and look up your country in the table to see how long the visa would be good for, and check with your local consulate or embassy and see what kind of backlog they have there. They'll be able to tell you how far in advance you should apply, how long it takes to get your passport back after you receive the visa. And use that to do your planning. Now, if there's a long backlog and you have to take whatever appointment is granted to you, you can sometimes upgrade your appointment, get an appointment in closer to the time that you enter the United States by asking for an emergency appointment. And in other places, you can kind of defer your appointment to get closer to the time that you leave. We have some students that weren't able to arrive in time for fall, trying now to do that for spring. And if you're not able to arrive in time, get in touch with your school as soon as you can, let them know, because they might be able to expedite a new immigration document for you for the next term, so that you can get an appointment and get to the campus as soon as possible.
I put a link into the chat about visa wait times. You can sort of check it out. It's not obviously, binding on anyone, but it gives you an idea depending on what visa you're applying for. And I also saw someone in the chat saying, "Aren't you supposed to now apply in your country of residence?" And yes, that was definitely proposed. I'm not sure yet whether that's become the rule. But even as Christy said, it's not even about finding going to a different country to apply. It's not visa hopping, but certain countries, clearly more people are applying for visas. So that question really does depend on which is your home country, even as to how long you have to wait. Okay, it's effective immediately. Yeah.
Okay, great. If there's no other comments on those, we'll move on to the next question. And that is, what practical advice would you offer to students or professionals coming from other parts of the world for integrating smoothly into academic or organizational workflows? And just a quick note for panelists, if there's something that a link or something you're trying to share in the chat, make sure the chat is selected to everyone and not hosts and panelists, because otherwise it's only us that's going to see it. Okay. But yes, sorry, did you all get the question? I distracted myself.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Anna, for this question. I think it's important that you access the resources that are available to you, right, from that particular institution or organization that you're joining, because this is I think the very unique part about the American college institution experience. There's a lot of resources built around having the student or scholar have a successful experience while they're in the US. A lot of effort and planning and strategy and intentionality is put into these types of services and programs. And I think a large part of it, just from my previous experience at my institution, is just that encouraging international students to access these resources and information, ask their questions, seek out information. I think very important to keep that in mind, because it can be overwhelming. You can feel like you're so overwhelmed because it's a different language, perhaps, right? And then you're getting adjusted to a different system, a different workflow, a different schedule. All those things can be overwhelming, but there are plenty of resources on campuses that are there specifically to ensure that students and scholars are successful in their experiences, because we all want that. We all want you to succeed, and that's why you're here. So very important, I think, to seek out that community and that support structure, because the information and resources is there and built around that.
Maybe I'll just add too, like that, the power of informal and formal mentors and advisors, seeking those people out. There are certainly formal advisors who will help you on campus, and then there's always somebody who has been going through this before you, or is going along doing it alongside of you, who's also probably wondering some questions or trying to figure things out. And so, just trying not to be shy about that is also, I've personally benefited from that.
And I'd also add that it's hard to do these things. It's hard even within your own country to start something new and be successful at it. So it can be extra hard to come to a very new place where you possibly don't know anyone and the ways of doing things are very different to you. So what I would say is you can always ask somebody. I know it can be difficult to kind of put yourself out there, but it's not going to help you to stay at home or to separate yourself and be alone. So try and speak up and ask for help if you need it or ask for clarification. No one looks down on that. Everyone wants to help you and wants to welcome you. And I meant to mention that in the introductory remarks is that we are so happy to have people come to our campuses um, in spite of all the noise around it. We want to welcome you here to our campus community and help you be successful here. So if you go into something new, even if you're not a very outgoing kind of person, try and make yourself ask those questions, ask for clarification, introduce yourself to someone so that you have someone you recognize and can smile at and get integrated into the community so that you feel you're a part of that community. And that's going to help you be successful as well.
Just a brief word of caution, and I affirm everything that's been said. But unfortunately, and this is not meant to chill, community interactions, etc. But bear in mind that you are a foreigner in a foreign land, right? And so the things that your peers could be doing, where there will be no consequences on them, could have consequences on you. So basically, whatever you do, do with wisdom, do it wisely. Absolutely, make friends, socialize, all the rest of it. But remember that you are a guest in this country and there is scrutiny on you, regrettably more so now than before.
Certainly, I think, Malathi, I agree with you on that. And in terms of, we're talking about protests and First Amendment free speech rights and different things like that that are sort of murky now, even for Americans, right? That we're seeing reported. I think what has really the power of community, the power of just international students and scholars within the community is important. And we, get every day, not just on the campus community to Chrissy's point about the community. It's not just within the institutional community, but the community at large, right? Where you are, people are very welcoming for whatever is at the federal level or national level, the rhetoric. I think the experiences of students and scholars, a large majority, I'm not saying 100%, and I don't want to paint this rosy picture that there are no issues, there certainly are, but I think that the local community and the campus community itself find international students and scholars contribute so much to everything, our daily lives and all that. So, in that sense, that's important to emphasize also that you might see media report all these things at the national level. For instance, the attacks on higher education and in particular Columbia University or Harvard University, these large prominent universities, but there are many other, there are over 4,000 universities in the US, and many of them thrive and are doing well and have, supported continuously international students on their campuses. So very important to find your community, I think, and be an active global citizen, if you will, and engage with that piece.
Okay, great. That is fantastic advice. Okay, this is the last of the pre-submitted questions. What are some of the ways that international students and early career scientists can address or cope with the rise of xenophobia, especially outside academia, while studying or working in the US?
It's such it's a heartbreaking question, and it's a really hard one to answer because we are in a world that is full of xenophobia in certain places and in certain moments. I maybe a few things I would say in reaction to that is just first of all knowing that it isn't everywhere, and so this isn't all of America by any stretch of the imagination. Like Joanne said at the beginning, the vast majority of people in this country want international students here and are actually quite open-minded about the intercultural exchange that is happening. I'd say kind of bringing out some of our tools that we all try to espouse in this activity of international education and exchange of like empathy, patience, understanding, and really trying to engage in the intercultural dialogue that is a huge reason why we do all of this. Trying to conjure those up in these difficult times and moments, I think is really important. And remembering that if you are in a situation where you do feel like you're facing some discrimination or in negative situations, that to pull out some of that empathy of where might this person be coming from, knowing that xenophobia and other forms of hate are mostly drawn from fear and a lack of knowledge. And so maybe you are part of bringing the world and a bigger mindset to this individual or to this situation. So where you can conjure up that courage to do so, your intercultural exchange in that moment is actually critical, and trying to find the places where there is common ground, taking it to a neutral place where you can share something that's in common with your humanity, like, oh, I also have black hair, or oh, I'm also holding a pencil. These kinds of things that take things back to the places where we are the same, I think is great, and then hopefully would open it up for a place of dialogue where you can exchange kind of where you're coming from, where they're coming from. This is the ideal situation, I suppose, to really use these challenging situations and turning them into positive intercultural exchanges. And that's not always going to be the case. So I would also say that there could be some places where you really might just want to avoid. And people in your local context would be able to share that with you. We by no means would want anyone, any student, whether you're international or not, to be in a dangerous situation.
And just to, I totally agree with everything Claire said. And but it's the xenophobic voice that tends to be louder, but it's not everyone. In fact, so perspective is important, because otherwise, really, you could just drown in that. And I mean, I personally am so heartened by the number of people who are not of color, right? Who could be sitting on their privilege and who are actually out there supporting those who are being attacked. I mean, it's incredible, the vast volume of people who are doing that. So I think just be aware, because otherwise, if you're constantly seeing the doom and the gloom, it can be very, very disheartening. But there's too much going out there that is very, very heartening. Social media, I'm a very into social media person. I'm kind of addicted to, Facebook and etc. but I have stopped reading the comments because some of the commentary is so ugly and it can lead me to thinking, oh my goodness, this is human nature. And then I realize, no, it isn't. Those are just the small voices that are being heard, So again, get perspective of the overall picture, realize that the hate is limited and the non-hate is so much greater. We just have to channel that.
All right, that is fabulous. Are there if there's nothing else to add on to that, we can turn it over to live audience Q&As at this point. We have plenty of time left in our session. So there's currently one question that's been asked in the Q&A. If anyone else who's attending has a question, feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A box. So the first question that's been submitted goes back to visa questions again. A request to elaborate more on the J1 to H1B visa pipeline.
Okay, so the J1 to any other visa, if you are subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, and again, remember, only an advisory opinion from the Department of State is binding, which tells you yes or no, but say you are subject to it, you can change to another status, not within the United States, but by going out and coming back in, okay, to an R1, to a, whatever else it is, right, F1, etc. But that is not allowed for the H1B. So you can't change status within the H1B, within the United States, or indeed go out, get your visa and come in until you've satisfied that 2-year home residency requirement. So if you are subject to it, you have to first comply with that 2-year. And it doesn't mean 2 years at one stretch. You could be going in and out, as long as cumulatively you've spent 2 years, in your home country. Then the H1B is possible. But if you're not subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, then it's not an issue. You just file for change of status if you're in the United States, or you just apply for the visa from abroad.
Okay, great. I hope that answers that question. There's no other questions that's been added to the Q&A. I suppose we can give it a minute and see if anyone has anything to add, but otherwise we can wrap up a little bit early as well. That's fine. I'd like to ask the panelists if you have any other comments you'd like to make or anything to tack on to what's been said already about any of these issues.
Keep your finger on the pulse of immigration changes.
Very dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe off topic, but I guess I would just like to say, like, what you all are doing in this society is so important, just in terms of biodiversity, and that I think that it's such a great example of where international education and exchange really flourishes, and so happy that this work is being done.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, one question popped up. Okay. Okay, so this person is considering applying for a J1 visa next year, understanding that the type of visa requires returning to the home country and staying there for a minimum of 2 years. If a short course of about 3 weeks were to come up, would I be unable to enter the US to attend, since I already applied for a J1 visa because the B1, B2 is not compatible with university-related activities?
Okay, so as I said, it's not necessarily so that you're required to return, right? So when applying when you have the DS 2019, actually, even before you get your visa or come in, as long as you have that DS 2019, you can apply for an advisory opinion to ask whether you are subject or not. And if you are subject, the 2 years, unfortunately, that's not negotiable. Of course, you can waive it and all that, but that's, a couple of years long process. So then you're saying that would you be unable to enter the US to attend it since I already applied? So as I said, you can apply for a visa. So you, just to summarize, you've come here, you've attended a J1 program, say you are subject, you go out of the country, you want to come back in on another J1, you can do that. You could come in on an F1. You can come in on any visa other than an H1B without having to satisfy that 2-year home residency requirement. So it shouldn't really impact your ability to come back on another J1 or something other than an H1B.
Okay, great. So the next question, how can I, as a student that's not international, support international students on my campus? It's a great question.
That is a great question. And I think you could check with the international office and see if there are opportunities there that you might be able to assist. Some international offices have orientation leaders or positions within their offices, those kinds of things that you can be a resource to international students and potentially also get paid to do those things. Sometimes it's as often, excuse me, sometimes it's as easy as if you know there's an international student in your class, introduce yourself to them, invite them for coffee, talk to them, get to know them, ask about their country. That can help an international student feel more comfortable. You could be a resource to them if they have questions about the campus or about the class or about why something works a certain way in that class. I know that others on the panel will also have some suggestions for you, but those are the things that I think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah, Chrissy, that's checking with your international office on campus first and foremost. I think there are many, many programs, like sometimes there are language tables, right? International students might want to practice English, or you might want to practice Japanese. There's always those opportunities to meet international students. It really truly is as simple as reaching out, just saying hello. If you see someone sitting by themselves in the cafeteria eating alone and you think they're international, of course, there are a lot of presumptions around that, who looks international or not, right? But just the mere fact that you're asking that question, I really appreciate that, because a lot of times international students do feel lonely. And they don't know or don't understand a lot of the cultural context of how to find friends or how to talk to friends within classes, within your academic unit. Depending on whether you're a graduate student or undergraduate student, those opportunities exist in different places. But the best place to start would be at the International Student Office.
Okay, so next someone asks, I've seen a lot of lawsuits from academic institutions like Harvard and Columbia, but there seems like a lot of information all at once. Can someone give updates on these lawsuits?
I think many of us are in the same boat where there's a lot going on, and a lot of it is not only spread over many different institutions, although some are more in the spotlight than others, but also to me, also not being a lawyer, like very legalistic in injunctions and these kinds of rulings and stuff like that. My understanding, and the panel will have to correct me if I'm wrong, is like something, the biggest ticket item institution of Harvard, where we currently are with that, I believe, is that they are getting ready to settle with the government for $500 million, and that would then unlock many more dollars of research funding that was threatening to be held. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what's happening with Columbia at the moment, but that's kind of the biggest item in my newsfeed.
Yeah. Malathi, do you want to go first?
No. I was just going to say I heard the same about Colombia a while ago, but honestly, I have not been as I have not been following it.
Yeah, and to Claire's point, right, there are many other institutions engaged in litigation of one kind or another, or in discussions with the administration. The ones that are reported, obviously, are the Ivy Leagues, for instance, like Harvard and Columbia. And part of the process is really about due process, right? That in this country, there is due process. And when institutions stand up for their rights and feel like there is broad overreach from the administration, they have a right to defend their students and their academic integrity on campuses. So that's why you see this legal cycle of litigation, appeals, and all those different things that are happening. But Claire's right, like there are settlements going on, so a lot to unfold and see. Colombia, I believe the latest is that they have settled, and so I don't know that it has a lot of impact for international students coming in, except for the government's requests of student records. But they're broad student records that are being asked, not just international students. So that is the part that impacts international students. But if you are a student that hasn't violated any of the laws, to Malathi's point, you are on a student visa here. And when you're here, we expect you to abide by the laws that everyone is abiding by, and especially for international students. If you're a law-abiding student and you're going about your own, business, going to school, doing your research and all those different things, by and large, it should not have an impact on you whether, the university is suing the government or not. That litigation process takes place, but most students, even American students on campuses, don't feel that impact.
I want to say one thing which is so bizarre about abiding by the law. All right. So America is divided into state law and federal law, other laws as well. But for example, and this may or may not be relevant to students, right? But pot smoking, marijuana, many states, it's legal. So of course, people are, smoking pot because they think it's legal. And on a state level, it is legal, but it is not legal on a federal level. So if you have any immigration impact in your life, you will be zapped for smoking pot, even though you were doing it legally in your state. So it's nuanced, but you have to be aware in some ways of both types of law.
All right, great. Are there any other questions? Typing questions out sometimes takes seconds. Right, well, if not, we can probably wrap this up. Yeah, this was a really excellent discussion. I definitely want to thank all of the four panelists for all this guidance. I think this was hopefully really valuable and definitely really interesting. And I hope everyone got good information out of it. And thank you everyone for coming, for being here.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
being
Bernie.
on the panel. Yeah, it's lovely meeting all you ladies.
Yeah, you too.
Good
Too.
luck to all you students out there.